Anyway, it's a pleasure being here, and my name is Dr. Vincent Giampapa, and I am a plastic surgeon and a cellular aging expert. So, we're all concerned about aging. Okay, so the first thing you ask yourself is, what is aging, and how has our definition of aging changed over the last few decades? Well, first of all, if you go back a few decades ago, and there might be a few people in the audience who remember this very renowned woman who was a real presence on television. Her name was Phyllis Diller. She defined aging as when your liver spots show through your gloves. And things have gotten a little bit better than that. Mark Twain defined aging as it's a matter of mind over matter. And it really, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. That's how good we were back there about defining what aging was. But in reality, aging is something that we're really starting to understand. And not only in the near future, but actually now we can do some amazing, amazing things. I got interested in medicine when I was a young kid growing up in Canada, and where I would be dissecting frogs and rabbits and trying to figure out what the heck was making them tick. How was their heart beating? So I was either going to become a serial killer or medicine man, so I decided I'd become a doctor. It was a safer route. So I became a doctor. I went to medical school at Mount Sinai in New York City. My dad did my general surgery at Mount Sinai, which I'll get back to in a minute. I then went to Columbia Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital, where I did my training in plastic surgery, and because I was really somebody who wanted to punish himself even more, I then did another few more years as a microsurgeon at Bellevue and NYU. So when I finally got out of all my training, I was looking at really what tissue, all the things we did to people, why did they heal? Why did some of them heal and why did some of them not heal? And as a young, I would say as a young surgeon, I was the type of guy who would always ask too many questions. And I was kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest with you. So we'd be working all night getting people ready for surgery, and my bosses or our senior attendings would come by and say, get this person ready for surgery. And I would say, he's not ready for surgery. His albumin and his globulin ratios are terrible. The rest of his protein levels are horrible. We're going to operate on this guy, and he's going to fall apart. And the surgery isn't going to work. So he would look down at me and said, get him ready for surgery. Our job's to patch him up. We'll take him to surgery. We'll cut out whatever we have to do, and then nature's going to take its course. Well, and sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. But in the long run, that's kind of what started to stimulate me to look for what was really happening with tissues and aging as we took people to the operating room, and we found that sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. I then went on to look at, to study more and more about what was going on with cells and aging and tissue, because that was my field. I mean, I would operate on people, let's say, for cosmetic reasons, and I started to question, what was I really doing? Well, I was reversing the effects of the aging process, but not working at the origin of where all this started. And bless you. Covered those germs up. In 1992, I saw an ad in this little crazy magazine called Longevity Magazine. Everybody remember that? Bob Guccione had that magazine at the time, and I used to read that. That was the only source of real anti-aging medicine, the guy who ran Hustler Magazine. So I said, there's got to be something better than Hustler Magazine for doctors to read. So I called up two doctors in Chicago, Dr. Klatz and Dr. Goldman, and I flew out there, and the following weekend we created the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. On LegalZoom, it took 20 minutes to create that organization. Today, it's the largest medical society in the world. It has over 20,000 members in 30 countries, and we started that in 1992. I became one of the 3 founding members, and then because the other founding members were not MDs, I ended up with a job of creating the board process. How do you certify doctors to become anti-aging physicians? What do they have to know? So for the first 5 years, I made sure doctors had all the information they needed to learn about the aging process and to treat people. Time went on, and we became very successful there, and I started moving to more research. And unfortunately, at that time, my father who was only 68 at that time, died of a very rare cancer, the same cancer his brother died from. So again, you have events in your life that make you stop and think. What's important, what's not important. And so certain events cause you to change direction. And when that happened, I started to think about, gee, am I going to end up with the same thing? Are my kids going to end up with the same thing? And so I started to focus on, what do you inherit? If you have the gene for high blood pressure, are you going to get high blood pressure? And at that time, the whole thought was, yes, you will, because if you have the genes, you're going to get it. Well, today we know that that's completely false. And that includes cancers. It includes most of what we used to think were inevitable. For instance, you inherit genetic tendencies, not genetic certainties. So if you have a gene for something, it's 30, 40% that you'll get that. But the other, 60, 70% is what you do with your life, your lifestyle. And this was what was called now epigenetics, which means certain compounds in your environment can actually turn genes on and off. Well, we didn't know about that, but today we do. And so what that did was really empower people to really start to take better care of themselves. So as time went on, that became a very important issue. I started to get into research and looking at cells. So what's important about cells? Well, if you look at your body, okay, your body is made up of 100 trillion cells. And each one of those cells are 6 feet of DNA. If you multiply 100 trillion times 6 feet, that's enough DNA in each one of you to go to the moon and back again. It's a lot of DNA. The human body is only controlled by 30,000 genes, okay? So each one of those 30,000 genes are not on all the time. It's kind of like a piano concerto, okay? When you're listening to beautiful music, you hear chords. And when you're young, that's exactly the way your genes work. Only 10% of those 30,000 genes are active. That's 3,000 genes. They're playing a perfect little piano piece. You get it to be 40 and 50, some of those chords start to sound not so great because the gene profiles are changing. And the bad genes are getting turned on, your blood pressure is going up, your cholesterol is going up, your joints are starting to ache. You get into your 60s and 70s and the music's really bad because now the whole different set of genes are turned on. So when we started to understand how that worked, we said, well, what the heck can we do to bring the piano back and play really nice music to make these genes work well? And that's when we started to do our research and looking at what do young cells have that old cells don't have, and what are they making. So I had the honor, just April of this year, to be asked to go to the Vatican and present our research on how we reverse the aging process in human stem cells. Now, I'll get to that in a minute, but stem cells are the most important thing, okay? Stem cells are what makes all your body cells. So if your stem cells are healthy, you make perfect copies, and your body stays healthy, and those cells are regenerated. So in April, we presented for the first time anywhere that we actually were able to completely reverse the aging process in your stem cells. In an old person's stem cells, we made them work just like a young person. Well, okay, that's great. Well, that was this whole new information of epigenetics and how do you turn genes on and off. And why is that important? Well, I'll tell you why it's important, because the human race, and just turn this picture into your mind. The human race is in a giant convertible, an old Cadillac, a pink Cadillac, going down the desert highway at 90 miles an hour, and around the bend is a 150-foot brick wall a mile thick. And the music's blasting, and no one really, they saw the sign, but no one's really looking at what's around the bend. Okay, so what is that brick wall? It's the global aging epidemic. There are so many people turning 50 and 60, not just in the US and older, but globally, that we will never be able to keep in the next decade those people healthy. The healthcare system that we have today is completely antiquated. It treats the symptoms, not the causes of disease. And the causes of disease originate at the level of your cell, and particularly your stem cells. So what is going to happen in the next decade or two is virtually every country on the globe will be financially completely bankrupt because they will not be able to take care of all these aging people, which includes many of us in the room. So we have to come up with a solution to how do we undo that problem, and then we have to come up with something that will treat the origin of the aging process, not the symptoms. And that's where the focus is right now. So it's genetics, it's all these fancy things, it's even new supplements that actually can turn genes on and off, way beyond what we're looking at as vitamins and minerals. So the term anti-aging really needs to be replaced. It's not about looking younger, feeling younger, potions or lotions. It's about keeping your cells healthy, particularly your stem cells. So, you know, aside from all this technology that we have that's going to even get better in the next few years, what can you do right now? What could I tell you to age better? And in order to do that, I'd have to, some of you will probably remember this movie. I'll evoke a scene from this movie called City Slickers. Anybody remember that movie? Jack Palance and Billy Crystal? Great movie. There's a scene in that movie where Billy Crystal turns over to Jack, who's called Curly, and says, "What's the secret to life, Jack? What's the secret to life, Curly? You're so fit. You're so." So Curly looks at Billy Crystal and goes, "This." Everybody remember that scene? And he said, "What's that? It's your finger." And he goes, "No, one." And he goes, "Well, what's that?" And what Curly's trying to tell him, the secret to life is to find something you love to do, something that makes you feel good, something that keeps you in a positive state of mind. And for Curly, it was living on the ranch and being with nature. Well, what we know now that your emotions, and there's all new research that shows that the happier you are, the more content you are, the healthier you are. So there's many low-tech things that we can start doing to really kind of stay healthier. And in summary, I think just about everybody in this room is going to have the opportunity to outlive their parents without any fancy stuff. And most of that is going to come from the knowledge of how to take care of this one vessel that you have, that's you. And that information is out there, but it's going to get more and more, if you will, into the public's domain shortly. So in summary, I'd kind of like to close with one of my favorite childhood heroes, who was also a doctor. And I like to use his famous line, that's Dr. Leonard Spock, where he said to everybody, "Live long and prosper." So.